supports Tommy Robinson. You'd actually like him to join UKIP. This is a man, of course, who's a convicted criminal, a man who led the far-right English Defence League and was once considered beyond the pale by the party you now lead, and who said this, Gerard Batten: "Every single Muslim watching this, on 7/7 you got away with killing and maiming British citizens. The Islamic community will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see any of our British citizens killed, maimed or hurt on British soil ever again." This is the man you'd like to see join UKIP, and you are backing a call to violence against a whole community.
Your producer asked me onto this programme to talk about Brexit, and I said I'd do that. And they said Tommy Robinson might come up, and I said OK. You've had me on here, I've come here today to talk about Brexit, and now you want to talk about Tommy Robinson. Now, it seems to me that the media is obsessed with Tommy Robinson. So let me finish. If you want Tommy Robinson, why don't talk about Tommy Robinson? Why don't you invite him onto your show?
Yeah,
I've got his number in here.
I will. You can give it to us.
I can give that to you
You can give it to
us.
But Gerard Batten, you have made...
You ask him these questions directly, because the media say a lot of things about Tommy Robinson.
Why do you want him to be part of UKIP?
The best person to answer the questions about Tommy Robinson is Tommy Robinson, who can give you the truth about what's happened to him. So why don't you ask him on your show?
Right,
no, I'm talking to Joe. You've had a good go. You've had a good go.
Siobhan, I'm going to I will let you talk to Gerard in a moment. But first of all, Gerard Batten, it is you who has made Tommy Robinson a thing as far as your leadership
is concerned. No, I haven't. I have been asked constantly about him.
Let me put the question to you, because you want him to join UKIP. UKIP actually has in its constitution very clearly states that they will not have members or former members of the English Defence League joining UKIP. You say you would like him to join, and that you changed the rules in order to have him join. So you made it a thing, not me. And don't make it immediate. No, let me finish. You also tweeted in support of those army cadets who were surrounding Tommy Robinson in that picture, which is why we started with that. So let's just get that clear. It is perfectly fair to ask you questions about why you want Tommy Robinson, and I have put into context who Tommy Robinson is. Why do you want that man to join UKIP?
First of all, in our constitution there is a provision which allows us to waive the rule if that's the agreement of the chairman and the NEC. And let me finish, because I'm answering your question, whereby we can waive the rule on prescribed membership of people who've been in prescribed parties, if that's something that we want to do.
Right.
I have said as my personal opinion that I wouldn't mind, I would be in favour of Tommy Robinson being allowed to join, because I think that he's a tremendously brave man. He's done a lot of things that I'm happy to say that I don't condone, I don't approve of, but I think in the great scheme of things, he's a very heroic person who stands up for the victims of industrialised sexual abuse in this country.
All right, well, let's talk about that.
If we could let him in, then I'd be happy with that. But that will be a decision of our party members, not me.
But why do you want a man who has condemned and does condemn whole communities for the crimes of a few?
Because I don't do that. I talk about the ideology.
You support this man.
Well, everybody says lots of things. I don't necessarily agree with everything that they say.
But you want to change the rules in your party.
No, I don't
to
want
have
to change
that man.
the rules.
You would like members to back a change in the rules from someone who led a prescribed organisation.
I would like the rules under our constitution, which can be set aside in particular cases. So I'm not asking for anything completely different from what we've got now, just to be considered in one case.
Right.
And I think in the great scheme of things, if you look at what he does in its entirety, then it's more good than bad, and I think he's a very brave man that's standing up for the victims. Now, can I say something about the cadets?
No. First of all, I'm going to let Siobhan in, and then we'll come back to the cadets.
The people sticking up for the victims were the very British justice system that had these guys on trial, that he was filming outside. You know, yes, people did let these girls down, and probably are letting these girls down, and things got in the way, and these people should have been found much sooner. But it's happened now. There are court cases going on. There have people been prosecuted. And so it is working and it is happening. And from my perspective, Tommy Robinson is jumping on this bandwagon after it has left the station.
All right. They weren't let down. This was brushed under the carpet for 20 or 30 years by Labour authorities, the social services and Labour authorities, also the police forces, brushed this under the carpet, didn't want to know about it. It's only down to a few journalists and people like... Let me finish, please. You've had a long go.
Hang on, Joe. This is a conversation. It's not just you riding roughshod over everyone.
It's down to a few journalists and people like Tommy Robinson and Peter McLaughlin, who wrote a book on this called Easy Meat, that we know about this at all.
There's, you know, majority of paedophiles are actually white males. A lot of people jumped on the bandwagon and just tried to use it for their own gain.
Right, well, Gerard Batten, that is one of the victims who has basically said that there are people using this for their own political gain. You're one of those people.
No, I'm not. There are paedophiles across the whole of society. For example, the BBC covered up
well, are
Jimmy
there
Savile for 50
white
years,
paedophiles? Are there white paedophiles?
Of course there are.
Right.
But
and do you condemn all white people because there are a few white paedophiles?
The BBC covered up the whole Jimmy Savile thing for 50 years. Yes, there are, and I would come down on those people with the full force of the law. In this particular instance, there is the industrialised exploitation in sexual slavery across the country, which is not just being done for the sake of a perverted lust, but for business, run out of cab offices, run out of fast food offices, where girls are trafficked up and down the country.
But you're condemning all Muslims who sign up to... But you are condemning a whole community, all Muslims, men, women and children, if they adhere to an ideology that you think is hateful.
I'm not condemning individuals, and I've never spoken about individuals. I talk about the ideology. And you know, because you've had me on this programme before.
Issue of Brexit, we must not neglect the crisis facing millions of people across our country. Last week, I wrote to the Prime Minister about the scathing report of the UN Special Rapporteur on this government's brutal policies towards the poorest in Britain. As of now, I've received no reply from the Prime Minister. But when the Prime Minister read the report, what shocked her more? Was it the words the UN used, or was it the shocking reality of rising poverty in Britain?
Prime Minister.
I say to the right honourable gentleman, and we have been clear, as my right honourable friend, Secretary of State for Work and Pensions has been, that we don't agree with this report, because what we actually see... No, we don't agree with this report. What we actually see in our country today is absolute poverty at record lows, more people in work than ever before, youth unemployment almost halved, wages growing, and that's because of the balanced approach that we take to our economy, a Conservative government delivering for the British people.
Mr. Speaker, it could be that she doesn't agree with it because it's an unpalatable truth that's in that report. The new Work and Pensions Secretary seems to have taken a lesson from her and created a hostile environment for those that are claiming benefits.
Yes.
One of the government's policies that's causing the greatest anxiety and poverty is universal credit.
Absolutely.
The UN rapporteur, Professor Alston, said it was fast falling into universal discredit.
Yeah.
When will the Prime Minister demonstrate some of her professed concern about burning injustices and halt the rollout of universal credit?
Prime Minister.
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, we've exchanged on this issue of universal credit before. Universal credit... The Shadow Foreign Secretary from a sedentary position says we've not done anything about it. What we have done, as we have been rolling out universal credit, is making changes as we have gone through those changes. But actually, I'm afraid that what we saw was a Labour Party that wouldn't support the changes we were making to universal credit. So we've listened and we've made changes. It's time, actually, that the Labour Party recognise that the universal credit is ensuring that we see more people in work in this country, that we see absolute poverty at record lows. And that's it, a system that delivers for people, encourages them into work, a simpler system that's better for those people who need to use it.
Jeremy Corbyn.
She might just care to cast her eyes over the report from the Trussell Trust. And I quote, "If the 5-week wait isn't reduced, the only way to stop even more people being forced into food banks this winter will be to pause all new claims to universal credit." The UN also called for the 5-week wait to be scrapped. In the coming weeks, universal credit is being rolled out in Anglesey, Blackpool, Milton Keynes, parts of Liverpool, parts of London and Glasgow. People risk being left with no money at Christmas.
That's right.
If the Prime Minister won't halt...
Yes,
If the Prime Minister won't halt the rollout of universal credit, will she at least immediately end the 5-week wait?
exactly.
Prime Minister.
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that he doesn't quite seem to understand how the system actually operates. No one has to wait for money if they need it. We've made advances. We scrapped.
We're less than a third of the way through, and already there's too much noise on both sides of the House. Members must calm themselves. The questions will be heard, however long it takes, and the same is true of the replies. Please try to get used to that. The Prime Minister.
No one needs to wait for their money if they need it. We have made it easier for people to get advances. We've ensured they can get 100% of their first month's payment up front. And we've already scrapped the 7-day waiting period. And as I repeat, what happened when we scrapped the 7-day waiting period? Labour voted against it.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, it's a loan that's offered for some people. And the Trussell Trust has pointed out that food banks... The Trussell Trust has also pointed out that food banks face record demand this December. I just gently say to her and the members behind her, food banks are not just a photo opportunity for Conservative MPs. Who themselves, all of whom supported the cuts in benefit that have led to the poverty in this country. Yesterday, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation research found, and I quote, in-work poverty was rising faster than the overall employment rate due to chronic low pay and insecure work. The United Kingdom has the weakest wage growth of all G20 nations. Living standards have fallen for the majority of people. What is so wrong with our economy that our pay growth is so much worse than each of the other nations in the G20?
Prime Minister.
Right honourable gentleman, that we now see wages growing faster than they have for nearly a decade. We see employment at record levels. But what the right honourable gentleman wants to do, he talks about scrapping universal credit. What he wants to do is to go back to square one. That means going back to a system that left 1.4 million people spending most of a decade trapped on benefits. It left people paying an effective tax rate of 90%, and it cost every household an extra £3,000 a year. As ever with Labour, it was ordinary working people who paid the price.